Hi.
Hey, what's up, Glenn?
Hey.
Hi. Who's here?
All right, it's being recorded. It's Brandon from Ontario. I don't know if you ever spoke to him before. It's
No, I haven't.
Mike. You also know him as Neo from California. Dana and Andy said he'll be calling in.
Okay, I was expecting about 2 o'clock, so.
Oh, were you?
I waited till about 2:30, and then I went out to feed the animals. So that's why I got stuck in time here.
Oh.
Anyways, what's happening?
A lot of stuff. I don't know. Mike or Neil wanted to ask you some questions because he's been wanted to. I thought you could answer those questions. Maybe better than I could. I don't know. He had things that he.
I have some questions about hermaphrodites.
Okay, speak out louder.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, but it's kind of low.
Okay. Pretty much what I wanted to... Can you hear me, though?
Yeah.
Okay, what I wanted to ask was, I've been looking at all the information about other animals to see what other hermaphrodites could have existed in the past. And I've looked at all the different primates, and I haven't found any scientific evidence of there being hermaphrodites, but I have seen allegories of it. I wanted to know...
start with worms?
Worms were the only organisms, but there's a wide evolutionary gap.
Why would worms be hermaphrodites and not others?
Worms would be hermaphrodite. Worms are more likely to be a hermaphrodite because they're more older than humans or the Homo sapiens. If you look
less likely to find a partner traveling through the earth. Therefore, if you start a new species, then less likely to find a partner.
I can understand that. The thing is, a worm is it's more simple than a human, and if you look at the evolution of gender arose, male and female, about 2 billion years ago in meiotic division, so multicellular organisms. Now, if evolution occurred of gender that long ago, 2 billion years ago, it seems a bit inconsistent for Homo habilis, or the clan mother, to have evolved naturally into a hermaphrodite.
Not likely to find a partner.
Okay. I can understand that, but I'm just trying to weigh in all the evidence. I haven't seen any other animal that can do this.
Well, you're going to see another one pretty soon because we're going back in that direction.
Yeah, with genetic engineering, it's totally possible. I understand that.
So get ready to go inside the woman you love for other reasons than you're doing it now.
That's funny. But yeah, that's one of the things I wanted to ask, the evolution of hermaphrodites.
Yeah, since the Neanderthalers brought about the genders in clan mothers, it's not necessarily a fact that the Neanderthalers were also hermaphrodites. They may have had the gender for Homo sapiens and Homo habilis at an earlier period before they had their cataclysmic event. In any event, it's a good point to make, but it comes back down to when there's no partner around, everybody's equipped to do everything.
I'll have to look into that even more.
I don't know if you're speaking now, but I can't hear you.
All right.
So, yeah, Glenn, I wanted to. I've been looking at here and there. I was looking at like current events, things that were happening, like news clips. And I think Dana mentioned to you, like it was all over the news. More than 1,000 birds just dropped dead, and these certain species of bird were like red-winged blackbirds or something like that. And I was thinking it was some type of allegory. And there was another allegory. There was a shooting in Ohio, and the shooter, his name was Michael Ferryman, and she killed a female sheriff, and her last name was Hopper. And there's another sheriff who was shot and his lungs collapsed, and his name was Bloom. His last name was Bloom. And I was thinking, hey, maybe they were saying, the ferryman, we're getting brought to the other side now, because that's what ferrymans do. Right? They bring you usually from life to death or something like that.
It's always possible, George, but it's media theater that is being put on. If these things are regular happening, and way this week there's been about 5 or 6 different events in different parts of the world. There's one in Quebec with pigeons today, I think. There's been fish and different kinds of birds. So they keep repeating that this is a natural event. It's funny that we have never heard of these natural events. And if it's natural, why are they now putting it on the news unless they have a purpose other than the story of birds falling out of the sky? Rocks falling out of the sky are one of the events supposed to occur between now and the end of the northern hemisphere. Is this an allegory for rocks falling out of the sky? Could very well be. But if they've got fish jumping out of the water and dying as well, then you have the beginning of a nova affecting something underground, underwater. And we here and Jenny in Ogdensburg this week have been hearing gurgling in our water systems. We have wells here, 125 feet underground, and we're on the Canadian Shield, the both of us. And if we're getting more of this gurgling going on, air bubbles in the water, it could very well be that the Canadian Shield has begun to rise somewhat. Something like the Australian plate on the western side of Australia has risen, I forget what the story was, 13 feet a month or something like that. I forget the exact details, but that tipped Australia so that the eastern side, northeastern side, is underwater, not simply from the rain that falls, and if it keeps on rising, of course, then it will affect all of the other cities, Sydney, and the one to the south there where all the rich people live. I forget the name right now. So, are we dealing with allegory? Very much a possibility. The media is making a big deal about something they say is normal, and that's not normal.
Yeah.
The beginning of it was always with black birds of one kind or another with red markings that suggest something like ecclesiastics. But in any event, what we're seeing across the entire world, in politics, in business, in the mafia, in religion, is a change in management is the general theme that is going on. The police in Toronto are basically having a problem since the G20. The police in Ottawa are having a problem since a woman was found beating up another woman in a cell, clothed her there. The mafia boss in Montreal has been assassinated, so is his son or something, and last night or the night before they blew up their funeral parlor. There's all kinds of these things, women taking over control over South American countries, in Argentina and Brazil, and there's been one in Chile, and Australia has one now, so does New Zealand. I don't know if she's still there, but she had been there recently. So a lot of women who are questionable women are taking positions of power. In the U.S., of course, if anything were to happen in Washington, knock out the leader of the House, the vice president, and the president, that means Hillary would step into the role of president. That's expected by a number of people. We're seeing a lot of the approach towards major flood across the country. The word wash is associated to the word cleansing, which has been a native prophecy for a long time, that the North American continent would be cleansed. Well, in the last week, we've had the heaviest snowfall in the world fell on Vancouver Island on a ski mountain called Mount Washington. It has something like 30 feet or something of snow almost overnight. Can't even get to the ski lodge, I'm told by a number of people. And across Western Canada, I know that in Fargo, leading up to the Canadian border, all of the earth on either side of the road seemed to be completely leveled with water, and any new water arising there would have no place to go, and yet they're expecting the biggest flood due to the melting of snow from the Red River coming out of the north there to the Missouri and Mississippi rivers. And the place where Jenny wanted to cross the border is called Emerson. That's a play on the word immersion. And just north of Emerson are, of course, two very big lakes, Lake Winnipeg Gossis, I think it's called.
Wasn't a guy, I think Warren Buffett or one of them, you said lived over there? At least near.
It's near Brandon, Manitoba, and Winnipeg, that basic area. Plus you have Lake Diefenbaker, that is a catch basin, basically a reservoir created to send water down the Qu'Appelle River Valley that will join the Red River as well, adding to the water. And that whole area seems to be dominated in structure by the Franciscan monks' monastery on top of a hill overlooking that entire area. Religious institutions are in all these places. Ralph Waldo Emerson is the American author for which the town of Emerson, the border between Manitoba and North Dakota, is referred to because of his writings. Ralph Waldo Emerson used to write about not following the masses, but making up your own mind based on the evidence that you see around you, all around you, and it's interesting that his first name, Ralph, is linked to the word raft. Mm-hmm. The second name, Waldo, is linked to the word radeau, which is a raft in French. And then Emerson, immersion. And radeau in French is a very interesting as a concept, because it's the concept of Huckleberry Finn on a raft. You start with a craft and you throw out to sea and you lose all control and you have a raft. You look at history and you'll find the letters to the word radeau in Leonardo da Vinci, Ardo. Ardo can be found also in the word NORAD. It can be found in the word radon. You can find that code word of meaning raft all over the place. I'm, in fact, building a raft right here as a symbol of what's going on in the front field so that it can be seen by passers-by. A craft would be more Noah's Ark, for example. It had devices to allow the ship to be moved from one place to another by controlling the direction, whereas a raft, you're just basically going with no direction. You're just wherever you happen to hit is where you can make land, type of thing. And that's an allegory for what is happening now. One of the things that you know about gas is some gas goes down to the lowest spot while other gases rise to the highest spot. And propane, for example, if you put a can of propane on a top floor, it will kind of drop down and affect more the bottom floors, whereas radon travels in water, and it comes out of the water. Right now there's a story about a place near Ottawa where the guy opened up his tap. I think the place is called Chelsea, Hell's Sea. And from the water, they measured radon gas lifting up at about 8 times the normal level. That might be something that could affect flying birds or birds that are in flocks. The whole idea of radon is to link it to nuclear activity, so that, for example, if the locks are broken at Lake Superior, at Sault Ste. Marie, one of the first places hit would be Elliott Lake, which is Canada's nuclear mining site, and therefore it would release a lot of radon gas. You can imagine that a flood coming from Lake Superior would destroy people on the ground as the big tidal wave comes flying through. But that's not the worst of it, because out of the water would come radon gas. And those people who think they've escaped the possibility of being killed because they live high up would in fact be affected by the gas. And the experience in Chernobyl was that if there's a nuclear plant accident, very few people die immediately. Less than a dozen people around the plant died overnight. But in the year that followed, more than 1 million people around the world died from the effect of radiation coming from radon gas around the world. So people like Montreal, who live on an island in the middle of the St. Lawrence and have a mountain in the middle of the island called Mount Royal. Royal basically is a play on the word Troy. They think they're above it all because they live on the mountain. Most of the people on the mountain are either very wealthy or they're ecclesiastics. But if water kills the people at the base, gas can also kill the people who are up on top of the hill. So nobody really escapes that kind of stuff. Any other questions that I might deal with?
So they're going to release it, like, I remember you saying something like how they even would have this gas is like, you said that people were refusing to move large quantities of the stuff.
Yeah, what is going on right now in that area is in a town on Georgian Bay, which is right in line with the water coming from Sault Ste. Marie. They are accumulating a large number of nuclear reactors, used nuclear reactors. I think the latest count was 31. And supposedly they're there because they're on their way to Sweden. Apparently, Sweden has the technology that can break down old nuclear devices into its component parts, clean it up, and sell the metal on the metal market, on the open market. But in order to get it to Sweden, they have to be put 1 or 2 at a time on a ship, and the ship sent through the Great Lakes to the St. Lawrence Seaway, and through the Seaway out to the Atlantic Ocean. And no one along the Seaway had been asked permission. You know, none of the mayors or regional directors or whatever were invited to give an opinion about these nuclear reactors going by their front door. And when they found out about it, there was a big scream for an environmental assessment. So these nuclear reactors are going nowhere for the time being. They're not being allowed to be loaded onto ships, and they're standing right underneath where the water would flow. There are 3 locks at Sault Ste. Marie, which...
that's just an excuse for it.
Yeah, which is, you know, Sault Ste. Marie is a name in French which means a jump. Sault, S-A-U-L-T, means to jump. And what is planned for there is called a blind thrust. In other words, an earthquake that goes up instead of sideways. It's an elevation like you would get from a jack. You pump up a jack and things rise. Well, what they're planning to do is to jack it up, and that's done probably with some shape charge underneath there. where mining has gone on, copper mining for years and years, back to native times, 1,000 years ago. They would jack up that area that would cause it to crumble. Any wall that is holding back water is going to crumble if you push it up. The jacking up of real estate is part of the normal plan that the troglodytes had for determining where they wanted certain things to be put on the surface so that it would match with something they had below ground. So they would jack up and they create a hill. By creating a hill, they would then say, well, that's where you're going to build your parliament. Parliament Hill would then be built on top of something that can communicate from below ground. The earth is not called ear for nothing. It's a listening device, and the listening device is from below. Same thing happens with Capitol Hill. I was born in a place called Sandy Hill. Hillary Clinton tells you a little bit about the link she has to that as well.
The Beatles made a song, Fool on the Hill.
Yeah. The 7 hills of Rome, each having a different reason for being there. So if the rocks crumble, the water comes down from Lake Superior and hits immediately into something called Gore Bay. Gore Bay is the name they used to give to the premier of Russia, Gorbachev was called Gore Bay. And if you look at the word Gore Bay, it's a play on the word regal. Regal means to go again, to do something over again, be born again.
And how would that be linked to ego?
Another.
The
next place the water would hit would be over a small peninsula, Georgian Bay. George has regal in it as well. So when you have two hints side by side, it's usually more direct, more important than just one mention. Over on the left-hand side is Elliott Lake. That's a play on the word toilet. Over on the, that's on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side is Lake Michigan. And the peninsula is shaped like a mitt there, the lower peninsula. And on the other side is Lake Huron. The key word in all of their talk about Caucasians, if you look at old movies and stuff like that, you'll have Ben-Hur, the son of Hur, H-U-R, Huron. When you get over to Iraq, the town is called U-R, or R-U, are the two key letters, U and R. Mm-hmm. You'll find it in the word Rumsfeld. Mm-hmm. You'll find it all the way through when you start looking for tracking these words. According to the natives that I've spoken to, the prophecy of the cleansing is attached to another prophecy. And their prophecy is that the human being was first made in North America. When I first heard them say that, it didn't make much sense to me because that's not the evidence. However, there is, in fact, a possibility that the second batch of Sami, those are the groups that populated Finland in two groups, one 4,000 years ago, one 2,000 years ago. They have the simplest genome of all the populations on the planet. Very few individuals have migrated into Finland, therefore their DNA is bottom line type of thing. The first group, and they're called Sami, Ami, as in Islam, and as Ami in French means friend. Friend has the word rien in it, which means nothing. The show called Friends on TV was a show about nothing. They kept repeating that. It was a show about nothing, lasted 10 years. The second batch of DNA arriving in Finland came from somewhere different than the first batch. First batch seems to have come from the east, from the direction of the Himalayas. But that's the first batch. The second batch came from a direction that seemed to have been related with North Africa. And these are people that I believe we call the Golden Hordes, the Caucasians. And one of the migrations matches exactly with the time of switching over from BC to AD, or the time of Jesus Christ's allegory there. The native people that I spoke to seem to suggest that their prophecy talks about man being born on what is the Bruce Peninsula, which is basically southwestern Ontario. The Bruce Peninsula is where they've parked these nuclear devices, nuclear generators that are on their way to Sweden. The Bruce Peninsula is next to Georgian Bay. It's surrounded by Lake Erie and Lake Huron. Therefore, if you look at the shape of it, it's triangular. A triangular piece of land is known as a gore.
Don't you have that across the street from you?
Yeah, Rigol and Gore are important words. Gore Bay, but you also had a vice president called Gore who preaches global warming. The people across the street from us are called Gorel, Gore with two L's. Their address is 911. Their piece of property is a triangular piece of land. So all kinds of links to the Bruce Peninsula. The richest guy in this area is called Bruce Snowden, but his job is plastic surgery, and he doesn't do it locally. His clinic is at the Burns Center, which has UR in it, and it's located in Windsor, which is at the end of the Bruce Peninsula. It's south of Detroit. Detroit is across the river north of Windsor because of the shape of the river. Just happens to make it that way. So if the natives were told a story that the first human beings were born in North America, and that's the story they repeated to me, that it was at the Bruce Peninsula, that would link it to the Mississippi coming up from the Gulf of Mexico. It would link it to the Aztecs, and if you keep on going down, it links it to the Inca. The word Inca is just a play on the word cane.
Yeah, that's where the cocaine came from.
Yeah. And when it gets to Texas, well, the Aztecs becomes Texas, and they come up the Mississippi. So if you're going to go back in time, a raft going south from Chicago down the Mississippi would be a great allegory for how they manufactured not the first people of the planet, as the natives were told, but a second batch of Caucasians on the North American continent. And they were, according to the prophecy, loaded onto a raft, which then took them to the Middle East. If you were on a raft and you were being towed down the Mississippi and out the Gulf of Mexico, you would cross at around Cape Verde Islands, go into North Africa, and have a Berber escort across North Africa to Giza. From there, it's a hop, step, and a jump over to the Gulf of Arabia and up the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, and you make your way up to where Akhenaten was raised about 1500 BC in a place called Hurry, in what we now call Syria. Again, Ben-Hur, son of Hur, son of Hurons, son of the Bruce Peninsula. All of these things are allegories suggesting that this second group of Samis arrived in Finland from North America, and that the Vikings, 1,000 years later, returned to North America to explore the area of the Great Lakes. There's a big misunderstanding when they talk about the Vikings making a mistake and leaving Denmark and passing right by Greenland because they were off course, hitting the coast of Labrador and going south. And a lot of people think that by going south, you end up going towards Florida. In fact, if you follow the coast, you would enter the Gulf of St. Lawrence. And you're going southwest on the St. Lawrence River as you are going down towards Montreal. You're not just going west, you're going southwest. When you get to Montreal, you have rapids they call the Chinese Rapids because they were looking basically for China. In French, it's called La Chine Rapids.
What do they mean by rap ID?
Eh?
What do they mean by rap ID? Rap ID.
Yeah, well, rapids are low water flow over a rocky bottom, and therefore you have to portage your transportation around it or build a canal to circumvent that area, which is what they did. But you got to remember the word China is also the word cane. It just has an H thrown in there saying it's connected. And that all of China began when, at about the same period in time, 2000 BC, a guy by the name of Gun gave birth with his wife to a son and that family is called U, Y-U. And from U became the biggest empire of dam builders in China. China always, to that point, had a lot of problem with flooding. And Gun hadn't been able to solve the problem. Yu solved the problem because he worked at it full time. So he became the first emperor of China. Now, it's not an accident that on the St. Lawrence River at Montreal, a guy called Yu was working the bootlegging business, getting furs from Indians, and when he died, his wife, Marguerite, which means daisy, founded the Grey Nuns. Marguerite de Youville is the founder of the Grey Nuns. And it all comes in linkage with China. If you go to upriver from Montreal, there's a place called Ogdensburg, is where my wife is now in exile because they won't let her into Canada. But if you keep going south, right behind Ogdensburg, about 20 miles away, is a town called Canton, China again. If you go here in Kempsville to the agricultural college, they're twinned with China. They're exchanging information with China on an ongoing basis. Just up the road from China is Potsdam, which has links to Germany. But the closest town to the Lake Ontario is called Watertown. And at the far end, closest to Montreal, is a place called Messina. Messina has a link to Italy. Now, forgetting these names for a second, look at the topography of that area. And as you go south from the Canadian-American border, about 20 miles out, everything dips down, is much lower in elevation than those places along the seaway. So any water coming down into Lake Ontario, hitting the seaway, and if isostasy is playing a role and it's rising, can't get into the seaway, can't send water towards Montreal. By the way, that's now going northwest. You're reversing, northeast, I should say. You're reversing the southwest coming into the seaway. Everything in that line, Watertown, Canton, Potsdam, and Messina, is much lower in elevation than is the seaway itself. So any water building up in Lake Ontario will automatically flush onto land. And it will circumvent that area and flood out into New York State, mostly in that area, and the Hudson River going down towards New York's Manhattan area will most likely arrive at a place called Flushing. Flushing, New York is not an accident. Flushing, New York is a definition of what's about to happen. It is the Chinese area of New York City, I'm told.
Yeah.
It is also the place where you play 10, See? Man is the component elements of the new slave. When you assemble all the pieces together, the new slave will have an exterior that's female, an infrastructure that is male, but a control mechanism which is Neanderthaler.
Yeah, and you were saying that was linked, those 10 parts were linked to the Horus, or, no, not Horus, the Egyptian mythology?
All linked
Osiris.
to the story of Osiris. Osiris, the guy who starts it all, but is cut into pieces, and Isis, who finds the pieces with the exception of the penis, and the story continues with Horus. Horus is the ruse. Now, if you destroy male by hiding the male, like a Trojan horse hides inside, you have an exterior which is female, an interior which is male. It has no penis. The fertilization of the egg is done internally by a pseudo-hermaphrodite. Not the original hermaphrodite, but one with a lot of extra parts. And the extra parts that are in there is the tellus communications in the medulla. It is the microphone hidden by the plastic surgeon as part of a breast implant. It is the ground position device located in the other breast, which allows the slave to be tracked. It is the what they call the triphibian slave. In other words, its mother gives it a new dimension because it provides it with a gill between the breasts. And the mother is called McGill University, which is at the base of the mountain in Montreal, where the CIA has been doing all of its work in Canada. Of course, it has no penis, but it will have a symbol of the original place it came from, and that's Australia. Therefore, it will be marsupial. As they came out of Antarctica and went through testing in the Pacific Ocean, they were then brought back, and the original ones were kind of set free in Australia. That's why all around the world you talk of aboriginals, but in Australia it's aborigines. As married women will tell you, they always write their name Ni. Ni in French, N-E-E, means born, their original family name. They are the first name. So the aborigines of Australia are the first ones brought out after the Ice Age. Then the other ones are called Roma.
What do you know about this group? I was reading a little bit about them. I haven't had time to go that much into them, but the Inuit, the guys from Greenland.
Yeah, the Inuit, the short word is Inu. but it's linked to intuition. And Innu were also the original Picts, the mountain people before Scotland had added the Scots in Scotland. The Picts were there. That means they were tattooed with pictures. Their origin was they were the border guards of Egypt at the time of the coming of Abraham and then all of the descendants moving towards Egypt and then eventually founding in Canaan, Israel. So there's a link to all of these people having a specific task. Out of Egypt, of course, you have an opera called Aida, and it's people leaving Egypt, and they need a special stage because elephants and tigers and lions are included in the performance. Walt Disney made a movie. I've been trying to find it, but can't find it anywhere. The Aida is part of the word Diana. And when they reach the North American continent, they have traveled across the Pacific and hopscotched the islands, where they hit at about the 55th parallel, and they're called the Haida Indians.
Haida.
They carry two very special things with them. One is the totem pole, and the other one is the large canoe. And of course, the totem pole had its origin in Africa. And the large canoe is the basis of the boats from which the Vikings evolved sailing ships.
Now, this Ida, is that linked to that one lady? I think she was a queen. Her name was Frida, I think her name was.
Well, in the Viking mythology, the fourth child of Eric the Red.
Oh yeah, she dropped off the stone.
It was called Frida.
Oh.
All of this stuff is, if you have the time and the money, the rest of your life, everything's linked.
Yeah, all these words are the stuff I've seen you post in like 2003.
Yeah.
And then they make more sense now that you mention them.
It's a matter of having an open mind, asking yourself the question, is it possible? Never mind, is it probable? Start with, is it possible? And is it possible humans were hermaphrodites? Yes, it is. Is it possible that they evolved by genetic engineering along with the natural selection? Yes, it is. Is it possible they were made in different batches at different times? Yes, it is. Is it possible that you can make people of different colors, different sizes, different type of hair, different color of eyes, different color of skin? Yes, it is. So once you know that it's possible, then you go to the next step. Is there any evidence that there was a society prior to the Ice Age that was further technologically advanced than what we know? Never mind in what field. Is there any sign? Yes, there is. If they were technologically advanced 40,000 BC, could they have made humans? Yes, it's possible. Now, you're not going to get first-hand evidence unless you're born again, and not through the religious sense, but reanimated through your DNA. Unfortunately, most people forget if they lived before and were reanimated. But there is no doubt that the Egyptians and their mummies were working at it, that the Vatican had been given instructions on reanimating coprolite during the Crusades to the Middle East. All of these words are attached to the word ruse, Jerusalem. And therefore, one must always ask, what's the RU for? It's for the ruse. See? It's not a matter of first-hand proof you're looking for. In a court of law, very few people attend murders and are then able to testify. What you have is the presentation of a case based on circumstantial evidence. And there's a point in that introduction of circumstantial evidence that is the same thing as is used by astronomers. It's basically when you have reached that point that you must say the evidence has become preponderantly in favor of this opinion or that opinion. It's overwhelming if it's preponderant. And if you look in the sky and you see everything turns around an orbit, and then all of a sudden you see that the orbit is no longer elliptical but is doing something funny, and you can't see the reason for it, the preponderance of all the evidence suggests that if it's not turning in an orbit that is normal, something you can't see is attracting it. And although you can't see it because it may be hidden behind the sun or whatever, you have to accept the fact that there's something there. In a court of law, you have to accept the fact that if the preponderance of the evidence suggests guilt, the person has to be found guilty. If it suggests not guilty, the person has to be found not guilty. Well, anybody with a functioning brain, and there are very few of them these days, because they've been programmed not to think properly, and not just before birth, but during the social engineering as a child, and through remote control for the rest of their lives, they're told not to do the thinking the way they were originally made.
Yep.
When they were originally made, they had this medulla in their neck whose task it was to retrieve intuition from the spinal column, gray matter, and bring it to the gray matter in the brain, match the two things together before they make decisions. Now that doesn't happen anymore, because genetically they've engineered the medulla to do something else. What it says, and what it used to say at the beginning, was, is this right or wrong? Is this good or bad? Is this evil? That doesn't happen anymore. People don't think that way anymore. They've been genetically manufactured to stick that aside. And the question the brain asks is, am I safe? Not am I right, not am I doing good, am I safe? Am I going to be in danger if I go down this path?
And that's what that was all about. Like in the Bible, it was like Pavlov knew how to brainwash people with the dog. But am I safe if I do this? Depending on how the master
And the one who basically worked this out is my wife.
Yeah.
Because she deals a lot more with feelings than us males.
Yeah.
And therefore, it became obvious to her in the context of what we were speaking of that was the major difference. People no longer ask the question, is this right or wrong? Is this good or bad? They ask, am I going to be in trouble here? Are my friends not going to talk to me anymore? Are they going to laugh at me? That's the problem. And until you reverse that problem, you can't solve the bigger problem.
Right. Nothing more than feelings.
Somebody say something?
Yeah, I did. It's me.
What's up, Andy?
Andy.
Yeah.
Hi, Andy.
Hey, Glenn. Yeah, talking about your wife. Your wife called me, like, the other day.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're aware of it, but...
I don't ask her questions, but she sometimes tells me of her own accord what she's done, and she told me that she called you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and basically, I mean, where she is, she told me where she is, and she's basically going to just kind of ride it out, like...
She's on a raft.
where she is, basically, until like, I guess after the event or so, and, you know, the place she is, I looked at it, it's kind of interesting. It's called Gutenberg, New York.
Yeah, it means God's temporary house.
I see.
Ogdensburg. Og is God.
Oh, Ogdens, yeah.
Den is the house. Berg means a portable house.
Gotcha.
Or a temporary house.
Gotcha. And I looked at...
There are 11,000 ecclesiastics there.
Gotcha.
They know something.
Wow. I looked at the if you look the aerial photo of the town,
yep,
it looks like the exact shape of a fish.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's like the symbol for a lot of places that I looked at that might survive the cataclysm.
Pisces.
I'm sorry?
Pisces is the fish in the zodiac.
Mm-hmm. I see. If you look at Tibet looks like a giant fish mapped out. And if you look at Manitoba plus Ontario, it looks like a giant fish as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Pisces, is shaped like the number 6, the shape of a female, lays eggs. But in urine, the task that urine has is to wash out dead cells. When your body cells die, they have to be washed out. And that's basically the role of the allegory for the letter P. It's as opposed to the penultimate number 2, which is poo-poo, or caca is the term they use. Caca is valuable because it contains the DNA that can be reanimated in its form called coprolite. So what nobody else wants, genetic engineers find the most important. And it's very much like a bear goes after a beehive and destroys it in order to get at the honey. Because a bear is looking for instant gratification. But a little bird standing on a tree called a honey guide waits for the bear to be finished wrecking the place. And the honey guide knows there's something there much more important than honey. It's called wax. And the honey guide goes, collects the wax, brings it over, and builds nests. Infrastructure. The same allegory applies to a gold rush. When the system wants to develop an area, they will announce through the media that gold has been found. And although nobody would have gone to that area and it would have remained undeveloped, there's a rush of people who rush out to look for gold. While they're there, they're taxed at the church, at the saloon, at the hotel, at the store. And the first thing you know, they build a house and they're taxed on their real estate. And a main street gets paved and access gets built from taxes. And the system has obtained from them what they could never have got on their own, simply by telling them, there's gold in them there hills.
Kind of reminds me of Montana.
Yes.
The gold rush.
Absolutely. Think, and you know, I don't want this to sound as an insult to anybody because I know most of you are about half my age. I'm not any smarter than you guys. You guys are probably even smarter than I was at your age. The difference between me and you is I've lived twice as long, and I look for detail. I look for things that are out of place. I look for things that don't seem to follow the rules. Now that you guys know what it took me 57 years to find out, you should be able to do it much sooner if you know the rules of the game. Yeah. Know that the names of people are the best code they have. Leonardo da Vinci. Don't spend too much time looking at the Last Supper. Look at his name. You'll get much more information from Leon.
Why?
You'll get it from Noel.
Wow.
You'll get it from Noel. 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 There is no L.
No L. Okay.
Take the L out of the things you're doing and read the words again. The L in the letter E is the basic structure that holds it up. That's the male. When you take the bottom line out and you're left with an F, you're left with a family without a father, and it's going to topple over all the weight on one side at the top. Those are all mechanisms that
it's a way, it's a
people.
Character.
Send the male off to war. Send them off to work. Send them to the Salvation Army, or send them to prisons. Because without the male in the family, the structure is weak.
That's a little bit more.
Look at the guy who made the Pledge of Allegiance. His name was, I think his name was Bellamy or something like that.
Think of Washington. Washington. Slave comes 10 after the washing.
And it's deuce too, DC. So it's 10-10 or something. So, like. 10 winds or something.
A wash is a cleansing.
And it's going to be
first
clean.
president of the United States was a dam builder. You build dams so you destroy them at the appropriate moment in time. Just think of the Hoover Dam over up near Mike's place there. What will happen if that dam breaks? Think of the Three Gorges Dam in China and the fact that the leader, the lawyer for that was the former Prime Minister of Canada, Brian Mulroney. That's scary. The thieves put up the infrastructure. They steal until they cleanse the place of all it has of any value. And then they destroy it. Why would you think the United States would be different than all the other empires ever built in the world? The United States shelf life expired in 1976. 484 years after the arrival of Christopher Columbus in 1492. The period since then is one of redemption. They're cashing in their chips. Everything you see happening in the United States since 1976 has been the cashing in of chips and the handing over of technology. And it goes through a pattern of handing it over to China or Japan or India or whatever. But I can guarantee you one thing. It will all end up in Brazil, Argentina, Chile, and Colombia. A, B, C, C. That's where it's going. Number 2 is number 1. Argentina means silver. Brazil is the nurturer. It's a bra. It's holding breasts.
But it also has lies in it, too, that word.
Amazons cut off breasts to work it better. The Rockefeller family runs the Sloan Kettering Cancer Institute, who specialize in breast cancer. Why? Because they need to get in there. They need to remove the originals and implant stuff in there. A listening device inside the breast will bring more information than any other listening device anywhere.
Well, Glenn, I've been looking at like those ecclesiastic, the workers that they had in the past, and like their reformers and stuff like that. And it's kind of interesting, like the means that they had of converting people.
Harm assist. A pharmacist gives you the clue.
Yeah.
Harm assist. Number 2 is number 1. So therefore, assist first, and that's what ecclesiastics do, and then harm.
Yeah. And that's what I see they do with like you were saying, you were telling me the other day about meditating and how they just.
When you meditate, you open up your brain and say, "Program me.
Yeah.
I'm stupid. Program me."
Yeah.
You should never meditate the way the Buddhists suggest. That's programming as good as they can get. What you have to do is sleep. When you go to sleep, you file the things you know in their proper places. An hour before midnight is worth 2 hours after midnight.
Okay.
Follow the sun. Go to bed at 9. Get up at 5 or 6 in the morning. Don't meditate. Don't pray. Sleep. That's what creation built into you. In any event, it's 4:51.
Mm-hmm.
I have one group of goats to feed before it's too dark.
Okay, Glenn.
I have to call Jennifer. So I'm sorry I can't stay around anymore. We could do this every week if you want, but for today, time's expired.
Yeah.
It's a lot of so, yeah,
Hey, Glenn.
Yep,
Can I
All right,
ask a quick
Thank
question?
quickly.
Regarding the names, is it possible that people aren't aware that they're programmed through their name?
Absolutely. Most people are not aware they're programmed at all, let alone through their name.
So they might be following an agenda and might not necessarily know it.
Absolutely. I've been there. I was programmed. Took me 57 years to figure it out. I broke out because I worked at it.
That's good to know.
Everybody is programmed today.
That's because they don't know where they're going. They don't know their path. So, like, it's hard to know where the program's going if you don't know how you got there.
autopilot.
Right. You gotta stop, study where you've been, where you are today, and where you want to go. And if safe is what you're looking for, don't bother doing it. Because there's nothing safe in the world, but there's a lot of things that need to be done that should be based on good or evil, right or wrong. And what we can do now is not save this universe. It's too late for that. But what we might be able to do is buy human beings 5,000 more years. And maybe in 5,000 more years, somebody looking for a critical mass won't have the problem I got today. Trying to find 13 functioning brains today without always having to deal with people who are working on a loop. You know what a loop is in computer? It's called yes, but, yes, but, yes, but, yes, but. But all the yeses add up to thousands, and yet they still have a but. You know. So remember, a butt is an asshole, and people who are yes butts are assholes.
Yes, but
Have a good day. Talk to you next week or next time you call.
Okay.
We'll
call you at 2 next time.
Yeah, today's my birthday. And
happy birthday, reborn.
Happy birthday.
The second time around.
What, you 71? Or 7?
You're too fast. Too fast.
The second time. Last year, I was in my 69th year.
Uh-huh.
Now I am 69. Bye for now.
Okay.
All right.
Later.
Thank you.